going to go ahead and just jump into this thing. I've got a list here, going to riff on those as we go through. So the first point I would say is this, that betrayal is an issue of justice. Now, 5 years ago, I would have never said that. Not because I disagreed with it necessarily, but because I wouldn't have known to say it. I wouldn't have thought in those terms. But absolutely today, I understand that hidden betrayal is an issue of justice in a relationship. So let me unpack that a little bit. And I want to give credit where credit's due. A lot of this that I'm about to share comes from a theory or a model of counseling and therapy called relational cultural theory or relational cultural therapy, which is a social justice-based model. And here's the basic tenets there, that people should be empowered to show up in relationships freely, making choices with as many facts as possible, empowered to show up or not according to all the knowledge that's there, knowing everything. That's not all that theory teaches, but that's a major part of it that I want. So I want my wife to be able to show up having all the facts because that's better for her and me. So let's think that through a little bit. If I withhold parts of reality from my partner, if I allow my partner to believe the nature of our relationship is something other than it really is, in essence, what I am doing is I am disempowering my partner. I am taking away from her choices to show up according to all, her true response to all the facts. If I withhold information, if I minimize, if I distort, twist, if I color her view of what's going on so that she doesn't have all the facts, essentially what I am doing is I'm trying to manage her perception so that I can manipulate her choices. If my wife knew I was doing X, Y, and Z, she would leave, or she would tell me that's not okay, or she would, whatever it is. Therefore, I'm going to withhold data. I'm going to not tell her I went here over lunch. I'm going to hide this over there. I'm going to leave out this part of the story. I'm going to outright lie when she asks me this question or that question. If that is my frame of mind, what I am doing is I'm trying to control how she shows up. And by withholding data that she doesn't have the power to know herself, I am disempowering her within the relationship. That's why I say that hidden betrayal is an issue of justice. It's not just. There is disempowerment happening. I am taking away choices that my partner has the right to make. This has huge implications then for how I, as a professional, am going to approach a couple where they're suffering from the discovery of hidden betrayal. For me to move quickly to a place of trying to get them to be same as or equal, or where the betrayed partner is in essence being asked to just trust again, that's unreasonable. It's unfair. I would even say it can be abusive and traumatic. This partner now has a history. They now know they have a history of being disempowered, of not being able to be given a choice. And so there's going to be a period of time where there's going to be a recalibration happening. The balance of power is going to feel like it tips because there has to be such a shift in the power dynamic. Here's what this looks like. I'm not saying therefore the partner who did the betraying, should be mistreated or punished or anything like that. That is not the case. But there may be a period of time where the one who did the betrayal, the one who was committing the deceit, who was disempowering the other partner, that one has to play by some rules that the betrayed partner isn't yet comfortable or confident to play by. Here's what I mean. They're going to have to demonstrate their willingness to be completely open and honest and transparent, perhaps while their partner doesn't feel safe being that vulnerable. They're going to have to demonstrate their willingness to put the relationship first, to prioritize protecting the relationship over protecting themselves, which, as I'll share later, actually is what's best for them. But they're going to have to do that to demonstrate that they really mean that they want that they can do that while the betrayed partner is still in a protective stance, watching to see, can I shift to putting the relationship first? I lived putting the relationship first for years, and look where that got me. So before that partner is going to step into that again, into that willingness to be vulnerable in that way, they're going to be watching the partner who did the betraying to look for their ability to be all in, essentially, to put the relationship first. That's going to feel like an imbalance. It's going to feel like the one who did the betraying, the one who is in recovery for addiction, is being asked to play by rules that the betrayed partner isn't. That's the result of years, maybe decades, of that power differential and the imbalance being the other way. Now, can it stay that way? No, it can't stay that way forever, but it might need to be that way for a time while trust is being rebuilt. Here's why this is so important as a professional, because I want to help them understand that. I want to help them both get that. I actually have this silly video. I'll put the link to it in the show notes, called "Are You on the Coaster?" So even if you're listening and you don't have the links in the show notes, you could just Google Jake Porter, "Are You on the Coaster?" and it'll pop up on YouTube. And it's just a silly little illustration showing this power differential. And it has been essential. It has been so essential, particularly in helping addicts, recovering addicts, or the ones who did the betraying, to better understand why it feels uneven and to understand how they can lean into that in a way that helps them get what they really want sooner, which is healing and restoration for their relationship. So understanding that can really set someone up to show up in a much more powerful and effective and healing way. All right, that was number one. Hidden betrayal is an issue of justice. Number two is this: disclosures can be healing rather than traumatic. I remember when I was going through my training for this stuff way back 2013, I think it was, when I first started getting trained and learning how to do disclosures, and just thinking to myself, oh, that sounds horrible, and people acknowledging this is traumatic. This is, the dump truck of awful stuff that the addicted partner is just offloading onto the betrayed partner, and now the betrayed partner is going to have to carry it, and it's traumatic, and you just want to do your best to minimize that trauma as best you can. And I thought, oh, good grief, that sounds horrible. I don't want any part of that. And now disclosures are what we do more than anything else in my practice. That's in part because I've learned that disclosures can be, I can't promise it. I'm not, I can't predict the future. I can't control the process for the clients. But I think it is possible in many cases that the disclosure experience, while still being very difficult, very hard, it doesn't have to literally be traumatic. Traumatic means too much too fast. And what makes those situations actually become traumatic in a long-term way is when the person's brain and nervous system, their mind, isn't able to metabolize that too much too fast pretty quickly, and then it becomes something that has triggers associated with it, and that those sort of classic trauma symptoms. But the reality is that if someone has enough support, receive that help to stay grounded, their whole brain online, grounded, as they go through that process. Grounded doesn't mean you're not having feelings, even big feelings. You're going to have feelings. I don't want you to dissociate. That's not good either. But if someone can be grounded and feel that intense support and able to move through it at an appropriate pace, not cram it into one 90-minute or 2-hour session, but take a day for this process. It really can be, though it's hard, grueling, it can be healing. I have many, 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 many times, dozens and dozens and dozens of times, had partners say on the back end of a disclosure, that was hard, but I feel so much better. I feel so much more connected because maybe the betraying partner, the addicted partner, has been coached to show up with empathy through the process and show up and be fully relationally present, which is an incredibly healing thing. And so, your disclosure can be more than just a dumping and offloading of all the horrendous data. Advocate for yourself. Those of you out here who did the betraying, advocate for your betrayed partners to have the time, the space, and the support they need in that disclosure experience so that it doesn't become just one more trauma in a long line of traumas, but actually can be a turning point to where, we're able to look at and talk about this stuff in an entirely different way. So that's number 2. Disclosures can be healing rather than traumatic. Number 3 is this: co-occurring disorders must be assessed, diagnosed, and treated alongside sex addiction. There are people out there who, they've tried to get into good recovery for years, 2 years, 4 years, 7 years, 10 years. And a lot of these folks have come to our practice and they're saying, I don't know what's going on. I do the groups, I do the books, I do the 12-step stuff, and I'm not getting better. I'm not getting better. And here's what I would say. Most of the time, what we find out, what we discover, is that these are individuals who are dealing with more than just sex addiction. I'm not saying just there in a minimizing way. I'm saying that there's something else on board. It's not sex addiction in isolation. There's another co-occurring disorder. Maybe it's depression. Maybe it's PTSD. Maybe it's a personality disorder. Maybe they're on the spectrum. But there are lots of things that are going on that we need to understand so that we can actually help the person get the results they want. I get to teach at Houston Graduate School of Theology, which is part of Kairos University in their graduate program in counseling. And what I always say to my students, I just drive it home in almost every class. I say this at some point. If you're not getting the results you want in treatment, right? If you're not hitting the goals, the treatment goals, you have to look at the treatment plan. Am I executing the treatment plan? And if you look at that and you say, well, yeah, I am executing the treatment plan and I'm not hitting the goals, now you have to go, wait a minute, what's this treatment plan based on? Well, it's based on a diagnosis. So I have to look then, okay, well, is my diagnosis reflected in the treatment plan? Are they appropriately linked? And if the answer is yes, the diagnosis, I came up with sex addiction and I'm doing a sex addiction treatment plan, but I'm not getting the results. Now I have to go further back in that chain, and further back in that chain is assessment. Did I assess for other issues? Is there more going on? And if I go back to that assessment and I go, is there something more? And I discover, oh, wow, you know what? Maybe there's some obsessive compulsive personality disorder here. Or, you know what? Maybe this person does have some PTSD. And now we integrate the treatment of that co-occurring disorder. Now we begin to see results. We've seen really amazing things happen when we discover that there's a co-occurring disorder. And what we're able to do is we're able to change the treatment so that both things are being treated. And then we often begin to see the results that we want. And so, if you're listening and maybe you're the person with the addiction or you're the partner of that person and you're thinking, man, we've been at this a long time. We're not getting the results. We're not seeing the change. Here's another way this often shows up is that a betrayed partner goes to a support group. This partner is hearing the stories of everyone else in the group and how their partners in recovery are doing and they're getting better and all of this. And that person's thinking, why aren't we making that progress? Why are we going so much slower? Why aren't we seeing those changes? And they begin to compare and despair, right? Maybe something else is going on. And so it's worth going back. I understand it's an investment to kind of go backwards, but it's also not good to keep throwing good money after bad, keep doing the same thing, hoping for something different. So go back, take the time to do the assessment. Any well-trained clinician can do that. And if a master's level clinician does that and doesn't quite get an answer, you may need to even step it up again and go to a clinical psychologist for a full psychological evaluation. But it can be a game changer. I'll tell you one quick story, and I'm changing details here. I worked with a couple who we weren't making progress. And honestly, I'll tell you that I thought this guy's a sex addict with strong narcissistic tendencies, which is common. That's not super uncommon. And we weren't making progress. I had suggested, and another therapist on the treatment team had suggested a full psychological evaluation. And this gentleman was resistant to that. And then his wife asked for that for her birthday present. And so he consented. And it came out, and this is a guy who had been through many, many, many decades of life. What that revealed was that he is on the autism spectrum. I'm not too proud to admit it. I had just totally missed it. But once I knew that piece of the puzzle, I was able to change the treatment plan. And when I changed the treatment plan, they began slowly making progress. With just some simple little tweaks and changes to the way I was helping them. So this is a really important thing. You deserve to have help from people who are not going to try to cram you into a one-size-fits-all formulaic approach. Look, there are box sets out there of recovery resources, and they're great for people who are only dealing with sex addiction. But when those box sets aren't working, you need to go to someone who can take the time and know the questions to ask to figure out, hey, what else is going on here? So that's number 3. Co-occurring disorders must be assessed, diagnosed, and treated alongside sex addiction. So the fourth thing that I've learned, and this is no shocker to any of you who listen to this podcast for a while or have been following me for a while, empathy is essential for healing. And I mean that both individually and relationally. So let's unpack that a little bit. Sobriety alone is not going to cut it. Recovery is not meant to be an end in itself. Recovery is not a goal. It's a means. It can be initially a goal, but only to then reach a greater means, which is a full life, a great life of rich relationships and meaningful connection and fulfilling experiences that last, right? That's what it's supposed to set us up for. Things that we couldn't have when we were active in our addiction, things that our addiction stole from us, robbed from us, thwarted. And so I've got to look beyond merely stop acting out, stop doing, this behavior or that behavior, stop having those thoughts. It's got to go way beyond that. And I think the next step beyond that for most folks in recovery is expanding empathy, because it is intimately connected to having more full, more accurate, compassionate, self-reflective ability as well. Okay, let me tie that together. If I can't understand my own internal emotional relational experience, if I can't reflect on what's happening within me in a way that is self-compassionate, which means I'm very reactive, criticizing, judgmental toward myself, which means I'm going to go into reactivity, which means I'm not going to then be able to be present with you. If I don't have that, I'm not going to be able to have good empathy either. So I've said this when working with couples, and I've had some betrayed partners kind of like raise their eyebrow. He's supposed to have self-compassion. Like, what about compassion for me? They're related. They're absolutely related. Okay, they're absolutely related. Let me give you a scenario. A betrayed partner who all this partner wants is to be able to share the pain of the betrayal with the one who did it, to feel known and seen and validated in that. But every time this partner brings up the pain, their partner, the one who did the betraying, goes into shame, shuts down. And now that leaves the betrayed partner all alone. So see, it's not good for anybody there. If I can reflect on what I'm feeling, I'm feeling shame come up, and I can have some self-compassion and some awareness of what that is and why it's there and the story that's connected to it, then I can actually stay present enough to hear and better understand and actually respond to what's happening in you. They are absolutely connected. And it works this way as well. As I am better able to hear your emotional experience and feel with you, that's what, to have empathy means. I feel this with you, not for you, but with you. As I'm better able to do that, that expands my ability for my own self-reflection and empathic sort of orientation to my internal experience. So they're absolutely related. One feeds the other, feeds the other, feeds the other. It is through this experience of learning empathy that I also am learning knowledge of myself. And as I have knowledge of myself, I can better share myself, which brings about more intimacy. So empathy is built in group therapy. Intimacy is built in support groups, in 12-step groups, as I'm listening to other people's shares. Empathy is built in individual therapy and in couple therapy. Empathy is built in my marriage. Empathy is built in my friendships. Every relationship that is healthy, every relationship that is leading toward mutual growth and flourishing, those relationships have empathy as a marker for them. You've got to look. If I'm speaking now to the one who has the struggle with the addiction, the one who did the betraying, I'm saying you got to look beyond stopping the behavior, and you've got to look to empathy, which is connected to that own self-compassion and accurate self reflection. Okay, and that is going to set you up for better healing, both for you and for your partner in your relationship. We want to cast that vision on the front end, okay, on the front end of things. I wish I had that clear and understanding of how important empathy is when I started this work, because what would have changed would have been that I would have talked about it a lot more upfront. And I would have been advocating for it a lot more upfront in the process. Okay, so that was number 4. Empathy is essential for individual and relational healing. Number 5, what I've learned so far